Hello and welcome back to another episode of Wrenching with Will. We're in the shop tonight. It's pretty late. This tractor just came in. It's got a torn belt on it. It's a quad track scraper tractor. So I'm gonna change it real quick and it needs to be back on a job site making money here in a few hours in the morning. So let's get going here. So usually we'll do this in the field, just convenient to do it in the shop as it's moving to another job site tonight. So this belt has gone bad. It's started to pull the cabling out up by the drive lug. So we run these belts as long as we can. A new belt's about $12,000 a piece for a scraper belt. So run it as long as we can, but once that cabling starts coming out and wrapping around bogey wheels and bearings, or we rip lugs out of it, it's time for it to be changed. Pretty easy, simple job to do. You can do it out in the middle of the field. All you need is either a crane or a loader or an excavator or something to help you lift that heavy track. The only tools I've got, it takes an 1 5/16" socket because we have to pull off this big front idler wheel. It takes either a pressure relief tool for a quad track, or you can do it with a 15/16" socket. These are 6-point sockets. There's a pressure relief right back here that will dig out of the mud, and then we'll release that, let the pressure out, and then that will allow this undercarriage to contract. Therefore, between the contraction and pulling this idler wheel off, we'll have enough room to get that belt off, the new belt on, and then it'll automatically extract to the pressure it needs. So 1 5/16" for the idler bolts, 15/16" or the pressure relief tool for the pressure valve on the retraction, and then just, hey, a bottle jack and some cribbing and a get it done attitude, and we'll get this baby whipped. We'll get at it. That took way too long because I have a really poor jack that is not pneumatic. Hand jacking. If I had the right tools, that would have been way faster. Now let's pull the other wheel off. Now I'm gonna let the tension off out of that back tensioner. I would like to have the tensioner release hose from Case. That way I could contain the fluid and catch it in a bucket. I don't have that hose tonight. And I'm on the shop floor, so I'm gonna let it go on the shop floor a little bit and then I can clean it up. But if I was in a job site, would have to have the hose so that we contain this oil and not let it on the ground. You hear it in the video, but you probably saw that track shrink way in. Just like a bulldozer, there's a hydraulic piston in there. In a bulldozer, it's a grease piston. This tractor, it's a hydraulic piston. So when I let that fitting off back in there, it's letting fluid out and allowing that piston to shrink in. Now what I always do is I pull this front idler wheel off and I put a lug or two back into it, and I use a ratchet strap or a cable binder or a chain binder, and I'll hook from the underframe to that hub and pull that in as tight as I can to give me as much room to negotiate this track as I can get. These wheels are heavy, especially when they're packed with mud. You can do it alone, just don't get yourself in a position to crush a toe or a finger or anything like that. Even that, I'm gonna get the forklift just to make that super easy to pop it off. All right, that baby's torsioned up in there pretty good. There's a swivel on that piston, so it kind of picks up and back as it goes. So now I've got room in that track. I'm gonna use the forklift. I'm gonna bring that front side of the track off first, take it outside, grab a new track, bring it in, and move forward. Okay, so this old track, you can see the cables built into the track are pulling out. So that one's definitely toast. While we've got this undercarriage apart, this is the time we need to look at it. I'm gonna dig out the mud a little bit so I can check everything. We're looking at the wheel bearings on the big idlers. We're checking all the small bogies. There are pivot joints that we normally don't get access to, but right here is a pivot joint, and then this upper wheel bearing assembly for this axle and front idler. So I'm gonna look over that good. I'm gonna use the forklift or a wheel loader or something, shake it around, make sure there's not a ton of slop and play in it. Now would also be the time if we were needing bushings or pins in the entire pivot assembly. Now would be a good time to do it, but just doing a deep inspection real quick while we've got this part. It takes 5 minutes now. It's a whole lot easier with this track off. And then we'll get the new track mounted on, torque everything down, go through the alignment process, and we'll be back in business. All right, I checked all the bushings, all the bogies, all the bogie bearings. All the oils look good, nothing's seeping, nothing's leaking, everything feels tight, everything rolls smooth, the entire pivot assembly pivots smooth. So I think I'm good to go ahead and put a new track on. So I've went and found a track out of the yard. There's something to pay attention to. Quad tracks have two different size belts. They've got a 36-inch belt, which is normally for the ag tractors, and then a 30-inch belt that you can get on the ag tractors, but it's more predominant in the scraper tractors. So this one had 30-inch belts on it. I went and found a used belt that we have in our inventory. The other side front is probably 60% worn. So I found something pretty approximate to that, and that's okay. We're gonna use this belt. We always wanna put the more used belts or the worst drive lugs on the front of the tractor. They never experience the life that the back ones do. They're not as important to traction and those kind of things. What we don't want to do is put a brand new heavy lug track on one side of the axle and then a really worn down track on the other side and torque that differential hard. Nor would we want like a 36-inch belt and a 30-inch belt, because that'll torque that differential in a different amount of pressure. So the most important thing I would say is to have alike tracks on both sides of that front axle. So I could put two 30s on the back and two 36s on the front. I could put two brand new ones on the back and two flat ones on the front, and that's okay. We just don't want to torque it across the axle super hard. So found a decent track with good looking drive lugs, good looking cables. The treads are worn down, but that's okay. There's still plenty of life left for a $12,000 scraper track. So everything looks good here. I'm gonna go ahead and start pushing it back on. The biggest thing that's always a struggle here, whether you're using a forklift or a mini or a 336 or a wheel loader, whatever you've got on site, is kind of getting the drive lugs up and started first, and then working that back corner in, and then kind of working this front corner in where we've got our idler wheel off. That's my game plan. I'm gonna kind of feel it out. Again, I'm doing this alone, so it's just gonna be me and the forklift kind of negotiating this track and finding a way to get it on. See, maybe I didn't have the best camera angle. I got it started on that back idler wheel, and I rocked that undercarriage to let it go under, and then I'm gonna try to set down here and then just work it in slow. Sorry, my phone died, plugged in for 5 minutes. All right, so I got that track on there, just kept negotiating and pushed it in around the three corners, nice and slow and easy. It's all about just getting the angles right. So track's on, it's sitting down in the drive lugs, everything looks good here. So all I've done is I tightened that bleed fitting for the hydraulic tensioner. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm tightening that down, I'm gonna take my chain hoist off. All I've got left is to remount this idler and then torque the lug nuts down. So this is probably the hardest part to do alone. So to get ready, I'm gonna have a couple punch rods so that I can get it up on those lugs, and I'll use those punch rods to center it, hold it, and then reach down and get some bolts started. So I might use the forklift to cheat a little bit. If there's any other guys around, this is probably the one part where it would be nice to have a second hand. If you don't have a second hand, you're gonna have to do it like I, and figure out a way to use your tools and make a way happen. So I'm gonna release my chain tensioner, and you're gonna watch me struggle to get this heavy ass idler wheel back on. The other thing I'm gonna do, I have to have that tractor up so high to get those big center lugs under that track. I'm actually gonna go down under there now and let that bottle jack down so it pushes all that free tension to this side, because I need all the free tension in that belt to get this idler wheel back on. I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna try to use the forklift to get that set up on there. How's that for a loan? So let me flip it around here. So again, I use that fork to get that started up on there. Have to be really careful not to punch out that center glass on that hub. And then my alignment rods, get a couple of them started. One thing I didn't mention was making sure the face behind the idler wheel was clean and the face of the hub was clean. And then we want to hand start all these, make sure we don't cross thread anything. And then we'll tighten them in a star pattern, and then we'll go back through and torque them down to factory spec in a star pattern. After that, I'll take the machine off the jack, I'll fire it up, and it'll auto extend. And then in a separate video, I'll go through the alignment process to make sure we align this track and we get up and going. Let's go make money. Hey, just to finish that video, it is just after midnight. It's 12:30. So that took me an hour and 10 minutes alone. I hadn't done this in probably a year and a half, so I could be a lot faster at it if I had the right tooling. If my pneumatic jack was working, that alone would have cut out 20 minutes. One silly thing I forgot to mention, don't be that guy who puts a track on and then realizes you've got the tread on backwards. Take your time, be detail oriented. The other thing is, hey, this tractor's down, the scraper's not running, we're fixing it at night. Now's the time to do a full inspection on this tractor. If there's a little seep, if there's a little leak, we're gonna fix it tonight so that we get back up and going tomorrow. This unit's good to go. I noticed I checked all the lights. They're all working, but one of them is loose and shaking, so I'm gonna tighten that down. We've got an exhaust leak. We can kind of see the soot back here in the hood. I think it's a loose clamp, so I'm gonna fix that tonight. And then there's a seep on the side of the injection pump I'm gonna look at. So just overall, as a mechanic and working on equipment, you need to recognize, hey, it's the little things that we keep up on that keep these machines up and moving. And when we've got them down and the crew's running, or we've got them down doing a repair, now's the time to do a full 360. And any one little thing, even if it's just missing a bolt and a trim piece, or something's a little shaky, a little loose, I promise we got to get ahead of it now and make our lives so much easier that once this unit's back up and running, it stays running. We did a quality repair here. We're going to check all of our torques and our lugs. We're going to check our alignment, those kind of things, so that we don't see this repair again. And we're doing a good job doing it right the first time.